Tonight, the world grows quiet. The noise of the day fades, and the old stories begin to breathe again. Welcome to Narrative Nights, a place where ancient myths are not told in haste, but allowed to unfold slowly, like dreams remembered in the dark. Here we walk beside forgotten gods, cross mist-covered shores, and listen to the wisdom carried through time, softly, gently, without urgency. There is nothing you need to learn, nothing you need to follow. Only listen. Let your thoughts grow still, let your breathing slow, and allow the story to carry you between waking and sleep. Now. The fire burns low, the night deepens, and the story begins. Under the deep ancient sky, where the stars whispered their secrets to those who listened, there lay a land untouched by time. This was a place where the air itself was thick with stories, where the winds carried the breath of the ancients, and where the trees stood as living memories of the old gods. Here, in the heart of the Celtic world, stood the sacred trees, the oak, the ash, and the hawthorn, each one a sentinel of an age-long mythos, each one holding the memory of the Sidhe, the hidden folk who dwell within the quiet spaces between worlds. Long ago, before the earth had seen the hands of men shaping its land, the oak stood as the elder of all trees, towering above the forest. Its roots reached deep into the belly of the earth, and its branches stretched high towards the heavens, as though seeking to touch the stars themselves. The oak was a tree of strength and endurance, its wood sacred to the gods, for it was said that the very bones of the earth stirred beneath its roots. Those who were fortunate enough to stand beneath its shade could hear the murmurs of the land itself, the ancient voices that spoke of a time before the beginning. In the quiet hills of Ireland, where the moonlight fell soft and silver upon the dew-covered grass, the oak grew in the heart of a sacred grove. The grove was a place of mystery, hidden from the eyes of those who had not yet learned the language of the land. The trees here were not mere plants, but were vessels of the divine, each one a bridge between the mortal realm and the world of the Sidhe. The oak was said to hold the spirit of the great god Diverted, the lord of abundance and strength. His presence was felt in the rustling of its leaves, in the creaking of its ancient limbs as they swayed in the breeze. Those who ventured close enough would find themselves overwhelmed by the power of the tree, as though it held the weight of all the worlds within its trunk. Some say that on moonlit nights, the spirits of the Sidhe would gather beneath the oak, their voices drifting like soft music on the wind, speaking of forgotten dreams and lost realms. But the oak was not just a symbol of power, it was a keeper of wisdom, a teacher for those who sought knowledge. The Druids, those ancient priests of the land, would gather beneath its boughs, for they knew that the oak held the keys to understanding the mysteries of the cosmos. The tree's roots delved deep into the earth, and its leaves whispered the secrets of the stars. To sit beneath its canopy was to become one with the land, to hear the heartbeat of the world itself. In the quiet of the night, when the moon hung low in the sky, and the wind carried the scent of earth and rain, the oak would sing its ancient song. It was a song of creation, of life and death, of birth and rebirth. Those who listened closely could hear the voice of the Sidhe, their whispers carried on the wind, speaking of a time long past, when the earth was young and the gods walked among men. The oak was the heart of the sacred grove, the beating pulse of the land. It stood as a reminder of the strength and resilience of the earth, a symbol of the power of the Sidhe to shape the world with their ancient magic. But the oak was also a protector, a guardian of the hidden realms. No mortal could enter the grove without first paying their respects to the great tree, for to disturb the oak was to invite the wrath of the Sidhe. It is said that the oak's magic was strongest at the turning of the seasons, when the veil between the worlds grew thin. On Samhain, the night when the Sidhe were believed to walk freely among the living, the oak would glow with a soft, otherworldly light. Its branches would sway as if in response to the hidden winds. and the air would be thick with the scent of magic and mystery. On that night, the boundaries between the mortal realm and the otherworld were said to be the thinnest, and those who stood beneath the oak might glimpse the Sidhe themselves, hidden in the shadows, their eyes shining with ancient wisdom. But the oak was not only a place of power and mystery, it was a place of peace, where the weary could rest and find solace. The air beneath its branches was always cool and fragrant, filled with the scent of damp earth and the soft hum of the forest. To lie in its shade was to be cradled by the land itself, to feel the rhythm of the earth beneath your skin. The oak was a place where one could find answers, but also a place where one could find stillness, a refuge from the noise of the world. And so, as the years passed, the oak continued to stand as a sentinel in the heart of the grove. Its branches reached ever higher, its roots dug deeper into the earth, and its spirit grew ever stronger. The Sidhe, the ancient ones, watched over it with quiet reverence, for they knew that the oak was more than just a tree. It was a link to the past, a doorway to the hidden world, a bridge between the mortal realm and the sacred land of the Sidhe. It is said that in the twilight hours, when the last light of the sun fades and the first stars begin to twinkle in the sky, the oak comes alive in a way that no mortal can truly understand. The tree is no longer just a silent sentinel, but a living being filled with ancient power and knowledge. The Sidhe gather beneath its branches, and the land hums with the rhythm of their song. The oak whispers of a time before time, of a world where the gods walked among men, and the land was alive with magic. And as the mist rises from the valley, the oak stands tall, its boughs heavy with the weight of memory, its roots deep in the earth, holding the secrets of the Sidhe. It is a tree that watches, that listens, and that remembers, a living testament to the power of the land and the ancient magic that flows through its veins. As the wind whispered through the leaves of the oak, carrying with it the distant echoes of forgotten songs, one could not help but feel that the trees were more than mere living beings. They were something ancient, something sacred, standing as silent sentinels between worlds. It was said that the trees, particularly the sacred ones of the Sidhe, were not simply rooted in the earth, but were connected to the very fabric of existence itself. Their roots reached down deep into the hidden realms, into spaces where the veil between worlds was thin, while their branches reached upwards toward the heavens, toward realms where gods and spirits dwelt. The ancient Celts understood the trees as bridges between the worlds, not just as symbols of life and growth, but as sacred beings that connected the mortal realm with the other world. Each tree was a passage, a doorway that allowed the spirit of the land to flow between realms, weaving through the very fabric of creation. In the stillness of the forest, beneath the ancient boughs of the sacred trees, one could feel the pulse of the earth beneath their feet, the rhythm of the cosmos. And if one were to listen closely, they might hear the faint stirrings of the Sidhe, those ancient spirits of the land walking just beyond the veil. The roots of the sacred trees, particularly the oak, ash and hawthorn, were said to extend far beneath the surface of the earth, reaching into the hidden realms of the Sidhe. Yet these roots were not mere tendrils of the tree's existence, but were thought to be threads of fate, linking the world of men with the world of spirits. It was said that deep in the earth, in the dark caverns of the world, the roots of the trees wove through the bones of the land itself, touching the places where the Sidhe dwelt in their eternal slumber. To the ancient Celts, the roots were not just a source of nourishment for the tree, they were the arteries of the earth, and connecting the physical world to the spiritual. The roots of the oak, for instance, were thought to be a gateway, a passage into the underworld, where the dead walked and where the Sidhe held counsel. The roots of the ash, too, were said to stretch far into the earth, touching the realm of the gods and the spirits of the ancestors, and the hawthorn, with its delicate white flowers, was believed to guard the boundary between the world of the living and the world of the dead, its roots entwined with the mysteries of the afterlife. The trunks of these trees stood as pillars, holding steady in the mortal world, connecting the hidden depths of the earth with the vast expanse of the sky. They were the spine of the land, the central axis of the cosmos where the worlds met. The oak, with its towering presence, was a bridge between the earth and the heavens. Its trunk stood firm and resolute, a testament to the strength of the land, while its branches reached upwards, stretching toward the sky as though seeking communion with the gods. The ash too was seen as a conduit between realms, its trunk a pillar that connected the human world with the celestial and the divine. And the hawthorn, though smaller and more delicate, was no less sacred, for it was said that its trunk housed the gateway to the other world, where the spirits of the dead passed through on their journey. The branches of these trees were believed to stretch far beyond the world of men, reaching toward the stars and beyond into realms unseen. The branches of the oak were said to be like the arms of the gods themselves, reaching out into the heavens, drawing down the power of the sun, the moon, and the stars. It was believed that the branches of the oak were the pathway through which the Sidhe moved, their spirits walking upon the wind, crossing from one realm to another. The ash, too, with its long, slender branches, was thought to connect the human world to the world of the gods. Its branches reached high into the sky, brushing against the stars, where the spirits of the ancestors whispered their secrets. And the hawthorn, with its delicate blossoms, was believed to offer a path to the realm of the Fae, where the Sidhe danced beneath the moonlight, their laughter mingling with the rustling of the leaves. But it was not only the trees themselves that were thought to connect the worlds. The spaces around them, the groves and forests where these sacred trees grew, were seen as places where the veil between the worlds was thin. These groves were not just places of beauty, but of deep spiritual significance. They were sacred spaces where the boundaries between the mortal realm and the other world could be crossed, where one could commune with the spirits of the land and the Sidhe. The trees were the gateways, and the groves were the thresholds, where the living could meet the dead, yet where the mundane could touch the magical. It was said that, in times long past, the Sidhe would often pass through these groves, moving between the worlds with quiet grace. Their footsteps were soft, like the rustling of leaves in the wind, and their presence was felt more than seen. The Sidhe were not beings that could be easily perceived by mortal eyes, but they were always present, lurking just beyond the veil. In the stillness of the night, when the moon was high in the sky and the wind whispered through the trees, one could feel their presence, as though the very air was thick with magic and mystery. And in these quiet spaces the Sidhe were not alone. The trees themselves were alive with magic, and those who ventured into the groves would often hear their voices. The rustling of the leaves was not just the sound of the wind, but the murmur of ancient spirits, speaking in a language older than time itself. It was said that the Sidhe would often communicate with the trees, their spirits intertwined with the ancient oaks, ash and hawthorns that stood as the guardians of the land. There were those, too, who believed that the Sidhe used the trees as a means of travel, slipping between realms on the wings of the wind, moving through the branches of the sacred trees as easily as they moved through the air. Some would say that the trees were not just bridges, but that they were alive with the spirits of the Sidhe themselves, their roots and branches imbued with ancient magic. The sacred trees were not merely connected to the earth and sky, but to the very heart of the Sidhe, their souls intertwined with the tree's timeless existence. And so the ancient belief endured, passed down from one generation to the next. The sacred trees stood as the living memory of the Sidhe, and the groves and forests where they grew were places of quiet reverence. It was here, in the stillness of the moonlit night, that the boundaries between the worlds were at their thinnest, where the Sidhe walked in silence, and where the magic of the land flowed between realms. It was here, in the sacred groves of the oak, the ash, and the hawthorn, that the world of men touched the world of the Sidhe, and the veil between the two was never more than a whisper away. In the quiet hills of ancient Ireland, where the land swelled gently beneath the touch of the wind, there lay invisible roads that few could see but all could feel. These roads were not like the paths that men tread upon, worn into the earth by boots and cartwheels. No, the roads of the Sidhe were unseen, as delicate and ephemeral as the morning mist. They wound across the land like threads of light in the twilight, crossing over ancient mounds, flowing through well-worn groves, and passing by the sacred trees that had stood for countless lifetimes. They were the pathways of the Sidhe, the hidden roads that the spirits of the land used to travel between worlds, moving with quiet grace and ancient purpose. It was said that these roads did not exist in the way that mortal roads did. They were not marked by stones or signs, nor did they show their way to the untrained eye. Only those with a keen sense of the land, of those who could feel the pulse of the earth beneath their feet, could sense their presence. They were the pathways of the spirit world, invisible to most but always present, flowing across the land like whispers in the wind. They wound through the landscape, curling around hills, flowing beside streams, and disappearing into the quiet of the forests. These were not paths of stone or dirt, but of air and earth, of time and memory. The Sidhe were seen to travel these roads with ease, and slipping between the realms of the living and the dead, between the earthly and the divine. They moved like shadows through the land, their footsteps light, barely a murmur in the grass. To those who could see them, the Sidhe were like wisps of smoke or whispers on the wind, moving with the flow of the invisible roads, always guided by the unseen paths that only they could follow. The roads of the Sidhe were not random, for the land itself was alive with meaning. These hidden paths often crossed places of great power, sites that had been imbued with ancient magic. The hills, for instance, were often the resting places of the Sidhe, where they would gather and hold court. These were no ordinary hills, but mounds that reached deep into the earth, like the bones of the world itself. The mounds were believed to be the doorways to the other world, the places where the spirits of the dead could cross over into the realm of the living. And it was said that the Sidhe, as they moved between the worlds, would often follow the hidden roads that led to these sacred mounds, where the veil between the realms grew thin and the air was thick with magic. The wells, too, were places of great significance to the Sidhe. These ancient springs, often hidden in the quiet corners of the land, were believed to be the tears of the earth itself, pools of sacred water that connected the world of men to the world of spirits. The Sidhe were said to walk beside these wells, drawing from their magic and using them as portals to travel between realms. It was said that if one were to sit quietly by the edge of an ancient well, they might hear the whispers of the Sidhe, speaking in the soft, musical language of the other world. The sound of their voices was like the tinkling of water over stones, a melody that drifted through the air, carrying with it the secrets of the land. But it was not only the hills and wells that marked the roads of the Sidhe. The sacred trees, too, were markers of the hidden paths, their roots reaching deep into the earth like fingers, brushing against the very bones of the land. The Sidhe were said to follow the paths that wound around these trees, their spirits moving through the trunks and branches, passing between the worlds as if they were one with the land itself. The oak, the ash, and the hawthorn. These trees were the guardians of the roads, standing as silent sentinels along the paths of the Sidhe. It was believed that the spirits of the Sidhe could move through the trees, their forms slipping between the branches and leaves, hidden from mortal sight but always present. The Sidhe did not travel like men, for they were not bound by time and space as mortals are. Their journey was one of spirit, not of body. They did not need to follow the same roads that humans did, for their path was one of magic and memory. The Sidhe moved through the land as if they were part of the land itself, flowing between hills, across streams, and through forests with ease. Their footsteps left no mark upon the earth, and their presence was like a soft breeze, a quiet murmur in the night. But to those who could feel the land, to those who could sense the magic in the air, the roads of the Sidhe were as clear as any trail in the woods. It is said that on certain nights, when the moon hung low and the winds whispered secrets through the trees, the Sidhe would walk the roads openly, crossing the land with quiet grace. Those who were attuned to the rhythms of the earth could feel their presence, though they could not see them. The air would grow thick with magic, the wind would carry the scent of the ancient trees, and the world would seem to hold its breath. the roads of the Sidhe would open up, like rivers of light flowing through the land, and the spirits would walk among the living, crossing the invisible thresholds between the worlds. But the Sidhe were not always visible. Many times they moved in secret, slipping between the worlds as quietly as shadows. It was said that if one were to follow the roads of the Sidhe too closely, they might find themselves lost, caught between the realms of the living and the dead, unable to return to the mortal world. The Sidhe were creatures of both light and shadow, and their roads were not meant for mortal feet to tread lightly. They were the hidden pathways, the roads that connected the sacred places of the earth to the distant realms of the Sidhe, where the spirits of the land still danced in the shadows of the trees. And so the Sidhe travelled these hidden roads, slipping between the hills, the wells, the mounds and the trees, their spirits moving with the ancient flow of the earth. These roads were not meant for mortal eyes to see, but for those who knew the land, who could feel the magic in the air, the roads of the Sidhe were a reminder of the deep connection between the earth and the heavens, between the living and the dead. As the winds of the night rustled through the trees, the first of the sacred trees appeared before them, the great oak. Towering above the land, its branches reached high into the sky, its roots buried deep in the earth, connecting the worlds of men and spirits. It stood as a sentinel along the hidden roads, its presence a marker for the Sidhe's journey. It was here, beneath the vast canopy of the oak, that the Sidhe would often pause, their spirits intertwining with the ancient tree, drawing from its magic and the secrets of the land. There are few trees in the ancient world that can carry the weight of time and memory like the oak. In the quiet groves of ancient Ireland, where the land flowed with a deep and quiet magic, the oak stood as one of the most revered of all trees, a symbol of strength, wisdom, and eternal presence. Its towering branches reached towards the heavens, while its roots stretched deep into the heart of the earth, drawing on the ancient forces that lay beneath the surface. The oak was a guardian, as a sentinel of the land, holding the sacred energy of the earth in its gnarled limbs, a protector of the realms and all that lay within them. The oak, with its broad trunk and thick, deep roots, was a tree of endurance, a living testament to the passage of time. It was said that to stand beneath its boughs was to feel the weight of history, to be connected to the ancient spirits that still lingered in the land. The groves of the oak were places of great reverence, for they were thought to be inhabited by the spirits of the ancestors, their presence woven into the very fabric of the trees. In these groves, where the sunlight filtered softly through the thick canopy, one could hear the faint whispers of the past, as though the very air was alive with the echoes of those who had come before. The ancient oak forests, which stretched across the land, were sacred grounds to the Druids, the wise ones who held the secrets of the earth in their hands. It was in these groves that the Druids would gather in the stillness of the night, their voices hushed in reverence, their steps light upon the moss-covered earth. They would gather around the great oaks, their hands raised to the sky, calling upon the forces of nature to guide them in their sacred rites. The oak was the tree of wisdom, and to sit beneath its branches was to listen to the very voice of the earth. These gatherings were not just for the wise ones alone, they were for anyone who sought to connect with the sacred energies of the land. The Druids would teach the people of the world how to listen to the oak, how to hear the whispers of wisdom that resided within its roots and branches. It was said that the oak held the memories of the world, that its gnarled bark carried the stories of the past etched into the very fabric of its being. To touch the tree, to sit beneath its branches, was to commune with the forces of the earth and the spirits that lived within it. The oak was not just a tree, but a living presence, a being that stood as the guardian of the landscape, watching over all who entered its grove. The branches, strong and thick with age, seemed to stretch toward the heavens, as though reaching for the gods themselves. The roots, deep and winding, seemed to burrow into the heart of the earth, touching the very bones of the land. The oak was the axis upon which the world turned, a pillar of strength and guardianship within the landscape. There was a deep and abiding presence in the oak groves, one that resonated with the very rhythm of the earth. The trees stood like sentinels, their massive trunks rising out of the earth like great pillars of stone. The leaves rustled in the wind, creating a gentle, murmuring song that spoke of ancient wisdom, of old stories, and of forgotten times. The oak forests were places of stillness, where time seemed to stand still, where the noise of the world fell away and only the soft whispers of the trees remained. And it was within these sacred groves that the wisdom of the earth was said to dwell. The roots of the oak, so deeply entwined with the soil, were believed to connect the tree to the hidden realms beneath the earth. They were thought to be a conduit for the wisdom of the ancestors, a pathway through which the spirits of the dead could communicate with the living. It was said that the wisdom of the oak was passed down through the generations, carried on the winds that whispered through the branches, passed from tree to tree, from spirit to spirit. The oak, with its enduring strength, was not just a tree that stood in the land. It was a bridge between worlds, connecting the living to the dead, the mortal to the divine. The trees held the ancient secrets of the world within their bark, their branches a living testament to the power of the land, and those who ventured into the oak groves, those who sat beneath the ancient boughs, could feel the weight of that power, the presence of the gods and the spirits that lingered in the air. The oak was also the tree of the seasons, its branches laden with leaves in the spring and summer, and bare in the fall and winter. It was said that the oak could feel the changing of the seasons in its very bones, that its roots could sense the shifting of the earth beneath it. In the spring, when the first buds appeared, the oak would come alive with energy, its leaves unfurling in a burst of green. In the summer, the tree would stand proud and strong, its branches heavy with life, and in the fall, when the leaves turned golden brown, the oak would stand in quiet contemplation, its branches shedding their leaves as though letting go of the past. In winter, the oak would stand bare, its gnarled limbs reaching toward the sky, a symbol of endurance, of survival through the harshest of seasons. But the oak was not just a symbol of endurance, it was a symbol of renewal, of rebirth. For as the oak shed its leaves in the fall, it would be reborn in the spring, its branches once again bursting forth with new life. The oak, like the earth itself, was forever changing, forever growing, forever enduring. It was a tree that knew the rhythms of the world, that understood the cycles of life and death, of growth and decay. To stand beneath the oak was to witness the eternal flow of time, the constant movement of the seasons, the gentle dance of life and death, of creation and destruction. The wisdom of the oak was believed to reside not only in the trees themselves, but in the groves where they grew. It was in these groves, where the air was thick with the scent of earth and leaves, where the sunlight filtered softly through the canopy, that the secrets of the world were said to be revealed. To sit beneath the oak was to listen to the world, to hear the whispers of the earth and the spirits that lived within it. The oak was a keeper of wisdom, a protector of the knowledge, a symbol of the eternal dance between the mortal and the divine. And as the moon rose high in the sky, casting its pale light over the quiet oak grove, the tree stood as a living monument to the power of time and nature. The roots of the oak dug deep into the earth, anchoring it to the very core of the land. The branches reached toward the stars, a reminder that the oak was not just of this world, but part of a greater, timeless cosmos. And in its stillness, the oak whispered of wisdom, the wisdom of the earth, the wisdom of the gods, and the wisdom of the Sidhe, the ancient spirits who walked in the shadows of the trees. In the ancient groves of Ireland, beneath the gnarled and weathered boughs of the oak, there existed a stillness that was unlike any other place in the world. The air was thick with the weight of history, and in the quiet of the grove one could hear the whispers of the past carried on the soft rustling of the leaves. These groves were not just places of trees, but places of deep, abiding memory. The oak was not simply a tree. It was a keeper of knowledge, a guardian of the land's secrets, a witness to the slow unfolding of time. The wisdom of the earth, the pulse of the seasons, and the voices of the spirits were all stored within the oak groves, their power lingering in the very air that moved through the leaves. It was in these groves that the Druids, those ancient keepers of knowledge, would gather in reverence. The Druids were not just scholars or priests, they were the ones who listened to the land, the ones who heard the ancient songs that flowed through the roots of the trees and the whispers that carried on the wind. They understood that the trees, particularly the oak, were more than just plants. They were living memory, repositories of the earth's most sacred truths. Beneath the towering branches of the oak, the Druids would sit in silence, their hearts attuned to the pulse of the land, their minds open to the wisdom that flowed from the very earth itself. The oak groves were places where time seemed to slow, where the rush of the world fell away, and only the eternal stillness remained. The Druids, in their quiet gatherings, would listen to the rustling of the leaves, for they knew that the trees spoke to those who knew how to listen. The oak, with its ancient limbs, was a silent witness to all that had transpired upon the earth. Its branches swayed gently in the breeze, and its roots stretched deep into the earth. It was touching the very bones of the land. The oak knew the stories of the world, the stories of the gods and the ancestors, of creation and destruction, of life and death. It was said that the memory of the land itself resided in the oak groves. The trees held the knowledge of all that had come before, and those who sat beneath their boughs could hear the echoes of those ancient voices. The oak was a living record of the land's history, each ring in its trunk a testament to the passage of time. To touch the tree, to sit in its shade, was to connect with the deep ancient memory of the earth. The wisdom that the Druids sought was not something that could be learned from books or scrolls. It was something that could only be felt in the heart, something that could only be heard in the stillness of the groves, in the rustling of the leaves and the whisper of the wind. The oak was believed to hold the memory of the land in a way that no other tree could. Its roots, deep in the earth, were thought to be connected to the very heart of the world. The oak's branches, reaching toward the heavens, were seen as a bridge between the earthly realm and the divine. The Druids believed that the oak's roots touched the hidden realms beneath the earth, where the spirits of the ancestors resided, and its branches reached toward the gods, where the divine forces of nature dwelt. It was said that the oak groves were places where the realms of the living and the dead were closest, where the spirits of the past could be heard, their voices carried on the winds. In these sacred spaces the Druids would perform their rituals, offering sacrifices to the gods, seeking guidance from the spirits, and calling upon the wisdom of the oak. They would gather around the great trees, their hands resting gently on the bark, their eyes closed in deep contemplation. They understood that the oak was not just a tree, but a gateway to the other realms, a doorway that connected the mortal world with the divine. The oak was the heart of the land, and those who knew how to listen could hear its secrets. The wisdom of the oak was not something that could be spoken aloud, for it was ancient and deep, like the earth itself. It was a wisdom that could only be felt in the quiet of the grove, in the stillness of the trees. The oak did not speak in words, but in the soft rustling of its leaves, in the creaking of its limbs, in the movement of its branches in the wind. The Druids understood this language, and they knew how to listen to the oak's quiet voice. They would sit beneath the tree, their hearts open, their minds still, and they would hear the wisdom of the ages flowing through the tree carried on the gentle winds. But the wisdom of the oak was not only about the past, it was also about the future. The oak was a tree of cycles, of renewal and rebirth. Its leaves would fall in the autumn, but they would grow again in the spring. The oak understood the rhythms of life, the eternal flow of seasons and the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. The Druids knew that the oak held the key to understanding these cycles, for the tree's very existence was a reflection of the larger forces of nature. The oak was a living symbol of life itself, of the cycles of growth and decay, of creation and destruction, of the eternal dance between the mortal and the divine. And so, the Druids would gather beneath the oak, seeking not only knowledge of the past but guidance for the future. The oak, with its deep roots and strong branches, was a tree of vision, a tree that could show them the way forward. In the quiet of the groves, with the scent of earth and leaves in the air, the druids would listen to the whispers of the oak and seek the wisdom of the land. The oak was a place of deep reflection, a sanctuary where the druids could reconnect with the earth and the divine. The trees themselves were not just part of the landscape, but a living, breathing connection to the gods and spirits of the land. The oak groves were places of quiet communion, where the druids could align themselves with the forces of nature, seeking balance and understanding. The wisdom of the oak was the wisdom of the earth itself, ancient, eternal, and always present. As the shadows lengthened and the first stars began to twinkle in the evening sky, the oak groves would grow still, the leaves rustling softly in the breeze. In the quiet of the night, the wisdom of the oak would be felt most strongly, its presence lingering in the air like a forgotten dream. The oak was not just a tree, but a living memory of the earth, a pillar of strength and wisdom in the landscape. And as the oak groves whispered their secrets, the winds would carry the ancient knowledge from the trees to the other realms. In the distance, near the waters of a quiet stream, another sacred tree stood, the ash, a tree of balance and transformation. The ash was often found near crossroads and flowing waters, marking the place where the worlds of the living and the divine converged. It was said that the ash tree, with its slender trunk and graceful branches, was a companion to the oak, and standing as a bridge between the earthly and the spiritual realms. Where the oak stood as a pillar of strength, a sentinel guarding the deep secrets of the earth, the ash was a tree of connection. Quiet and slender, it grew beside the waters and at the crossroads where the land itself seemed to breathe between the worlds. The ash was a tree of liminality, a tree that stood at the threshold, bridging realms with its graceful, upward-reaching branches and its deep, grounding roots. It was the keeper of passage, the tree that linked the world of the living to the world of the Sidhe, those hidden spirits who wandered in the twilight between life and death. The ash was often found near sacred wells, streams, and other crossing places, where the flow of water met the land in a union of movement and stillness. It was here, by the living waters, that the ash flourished. The water seemed to breathe life into the tree, making it a living link between the earth, the sky, and the realms beyond. The ash was not merely a tree that stood rooted in the earth. It was a conduit, a vessel through which the forces of nature passed, flowing like the streams and rivers that ran at its feet. It was said that the ash had the power to connect the hidden worlds to the mortal world, much as the waters of the wells and streams acted as bridges between the realms. Where the oak anchored the earth, the ash reached toward the unseen, its branches swaying in the wind, as though beckoning to the spirit world. The ash was a tree of motion, its leaves fluttering like whispers on the breeze, its branches weaving a path for the Sidhe to walk unseen. In the stillness of the grove, when the moon hung high above and the stars shone like ancient eyes, the ash stood as a quiet guide, its roots delving deep into the land, reaching for the hidden realms beneath. It is no wonder that the ash was so often seen near the living waters, for it was in the water that the realms were believed to meet. Sacred wells were not simply places of water, but places of transition, where the veil between worlds grew thin. To stand beside a sacred well or stream was to stand at the boundary between the mortal world and the other world, where the Sidhe, those ageless spirits of the land, moved like shadows in the depths of the waters. The ash was believed to be the tree of this transition, its presence a marker for those who sought to cross the threshold between the worlds. The water flowed gently through the land, its soft murmur like the whisper of forgotten memories. The ash, standing at the water's edge, seemed to listen to the stream, its branches bowing in the wind, as though speaking in an ancient language known only to the trees. The waters held the secrets of the earth, the songs of the Sidhe, the memories of those who had passed on and those who would come. The ash, with its slender form, seemed to carry the pulse of the land within its limbs. Its bark, smooth and pale, seemed to shimmer in the quiet light of the moon, as though the tree itself was alive with the breath of the earth. The Sidhe, The hidden ones were said to travel by the paths that the ash marked. These paths, winding through the land, were often invisible to mortal eyes, hidden in plain sight beneath the soft rustling of the leaves and the flow of the waters. But for those who knew the land, for those who understood the deep magic that flowed through it, the ash stood as a silent guide, pointing the way to the realms of the Sidhe. The ash did not stand alone, but was a part of the landscape, woven into the fabric of the world itself, its presence a quiet marker for those who moved between worlds. In the quiet of the night, the Sidhe were said to walk the paths that the ash traced, moving with the flow of the waters, and slipping between the worlds like soft shadows beneath the moon. The ash, though slender and delicate in appearance, was no less sacred than the mighty oak. It stood as a reminder that all trees, all living things, held the power of connection, of linking one realm to another. The ash's role was not to anchor the earth, but to offer passage, to be the bridge between worlds. It was the keeper of the boundary, the tree that stood at the crossroads, where the living met the dead, where the mortal met the divine. The ash tree's connection to the living waters was especially profound. In many Celtic myths, water was seen as a purifier, a place where the soul could be cleansed and renewed. The streams and wells where the ash grew were sacred places of healing and transformation. It was said that the ash had the power to heal, to soothe the troubled spirit, and to open the doors to the spirit world. The water, flowing gently through the land, and carried with it the whispers of the Sidhe, the ancient ones who passed silently through the trees. The ash was not just a tree by the water. It was a symbol of the flow of life itself, the ever-moving current of time and spirit. In the deep of the forest, where the shadows were thick and the light was faint, the ash trees stood like guardians beside the streams. Their roots stretched deep into the earth as though seeking to touch the pulse of the land, while their branches reached toward the sky, their leaves swaying gently in the wind. The ash seemed to echo the flow of the water, its quiet presence a reflection of the ever-moving cycle of the life. The leaves, pale and delicate, fluttered like whispers in the breeze, speaking a language known only to the land. It was said that those who sat beneath the ash, near the flowing waters, could hear the ancient secrets of the earth, the wisdom of the Sidhe, thus whispered through the leaves and the rippling stream. The ash was a tree of subtlety, its power quiet and gentle yet ever present. It was not a tree that demanded attention, but one that was felt in the stillness of the night, in the quiet movement of the stream, in the gentle rustling of the leaves. The Sidhe, it was believed, walked along the paths that the ash traced, following the flow of the waters, slipping silently between the worlds. They moved with the current, unseen yet always near. Their presence felt in the cool breeze that drifted through the trees, and so the ash stood at the crossroads of realms, its presence a quiet marker for those who knew the land. It was a tree of connection, a tree of passage, a tree that linked the earth with the heavens and the living with the dead. It stood beside the living waters, where the boundaries between worlds were thin and where the Sidhe moved like whispers in the dark. The ash was the tree that guided the way for those who sought to journey between the worlds, a silent guardian at the edge of the waters, always watching, always waiting. The ash, with its slender, graceful form and its deep connection to the living waters, was not merely a tree of the earth. It was a tree of passage, marking the quiet roads that led from the world of the living to the quiet, shadowed realm of the Sidhe. These roads, like whispered dreams on a still night, were invisible to most, yet ever present for those attuned to the land's deepest rhythms. The ash trees, standing at crossroads, near the edges of ancient forests and beside the quiet streams, were the silent sentinels that watched over these hidden paths, guiding those who sought to traverse the veils between the worlds. It was believed that the ash trees stood as markers along the roads of the other world, the paths where the Sidhe walked, their footsteps light upon the earth, their presence felt more than seen. These paths, winding through the quiet landscape, were said to lead to places where the boundaries between worlds were thinnest. Crossroads, the places where the roads of the land met, were sacred spots where the veil between realms grew frail, where the Sidhe would slip through the cracks in the fabric of time, moving from one world to the next. The ash, with its delicate leaves that fluttered in the breeze, was said to hold the memory of these roads, its branches reaching toward the heavens, its roots delving deep into the earth. Although the quiet wind that rustled through the ash seemed to carry with it the whispers of the other world, a soft murmur that spoke of hidden paths and forgotten realms. These roads were not for mortal feet to follow lightly, for they led to places beyond the reach of time and understanding. The ash trees in their quiet beauty marked the boundaries between the living and the dead, the known and the unknown. At the crossroads, where roads split in every direction, the ash tree stood as a silent sentinel, marking the threshold between the worlds. These sacred places were often the site of rituals and offerings, where the living would seek guidance from the spirits of the land. The ash, with its slender trunk and delicate branches, was believed to be a conduit between the mortal world and the other world, where the Sidhe could be seen and heard, if only for a moment. It was at these crossroads, beneath the boughs of the ash, that the veil was thinnest, and the spirits of the Sidhe could pass between realms with ease. Crossroads, too, were places of great power, where decisions were made and paths were chosen. It was said that the Sidhe would often appear at these junctures, their presence a silent invitation to those who wished to journey between worlds. The roads of the other world were not always visible to the mortal eye, but the ash trees marked their presence with quiet grace, their roots sinking deep into the earth, touching the hidden pathways of the Sidhe. The ash was not just a tree, but a living guide, marking the quiet paths that led to the realms beyond. The ash was also believed to mark the edges of ancient forests, where the shadows of the trees grew long and the air seemed thick with ancient power. These forest edges, where the light faded into twilight, were seen as places of great magic and mystery. It was here that the Sidhe were said to cross over, moving silently between the trees, and their footsteps as soft as whispers in the night. The ash trees, standing at the boundaries of the forest, were the watchful guardians of these thresholds, marking the entrance to the hidden roads of the other world. The forest edges, where the trees grew close together and the underbrush thickened, were thought to be places where the Sidhe would gather, their ethereal forms slipping between the trees like shadows. The ash, with its delicate yet sturdy frame, was a sentinel along these edges, and standing as a bridge between the world of the living and the unseen realm. It was at these places, where the land grew quiet and still, that the paths of the Sidhe were most often found, winding through the trees and leading to realms unknown. Hidden paths were said to wind through the land, known only to those who could see beyond the veil. These paths were often marked by the presence of ash trees, their slender trunks standing like silent guardians of the way. The land, and in its quiet stillness, seemed to hum with the presence of these roads, roads that led to places beyond mortal comprehension. The ash trees mark the way, their roots reaching deep into the earth, their branches stretching toward the sky, a living testament to the connection between the worlds. In the cool, shadowed depths of the forests, where the light rarely touched the ground, the ash stood tall, its bark pale and smooth, its leaves shimmering in the faint light. And these were the trees that the Sidhe were said to walk beside, their forms slipping through the shadows, moving along the hidden roads with ease. The ash trees, with their graceful forms and quiet presence, were the markers of these roads, the silent guideposts leading the way from the mortal realm to the other world, from the known to the unknown. The Sidhe, those ancient spirits of the land, were believed to pass through these quiet paths as they travelled between the worlds. The roads of the other world were not always easy to find. but the ash trees standing at the edges of forests beside streams and at crossroads were always there, marking the way. The Sidhe would move through the land with grace, their footsteps leaving no trace upon the earth, their presence felt only in the soft rustling of the leaves and the faint murmur of the wind. The ash was the keeper of these hidden roads, its roots and branches intertwined with the ancient magic that flowed through the land. And so, in the stillness of the night, when the wind whispered through the trees and the stars twinkled like forgotten dreams, the ash trees stood as quiet guardians of the roads of the Sidhe. They were the markers of the unseen paths, the trees that stood between the worlds, connecting the mortal to the divine, the living to the dead. The ash, though gentle and slender in form, was a powerful presence, a living bridge between realms guiding the Sidhe along the quiet roads of the other world. And as the ash trees stood at the edge of the quiet forest, near the crossroads where paths met and diverged, there was another tree that stood beside them, one that held even deeper power and reverence in the hearts of the people, the hawthorn. This tree, often found near water and in places of great spiritual significance, was the most famous of all the fairy trees. Its pale blossoms, its gnarled branches, and its deep connection to the Sidhe made it a symbol of both beauty and mystery, of life and death. The hawthorn, like the ash, was a sentinel of the other world, standing at the boundary between the mortal and the divine. In the stillness of the wide open fields where the land seemed to stretch forever under the expanse of the sky, there would often stand a single hawthorn. These lone trees, with their twisted branches reaching toward the heavens, were solitary sentinels, marking the quiet places of great power. In the soft, rolling hills of Ireland, where the wind whispered through the tall grasses and the sky hung low over the land, the lone hawthorn stood as a living symbol of mystery and reverence. It was a tree set apart, not merely a part of the landscape, but a focal point that seemed to draw the very essence of the earth and sky to it. These solitary hawthorns, often found in quiet corners of fields, in places where the land curved gently and the light of the setting sun would cast long shadows, were seen as sacred. They were trees that had become more than trees. They were gateways, places where the veil between the world of the living and the world of the Sidhe, was thin. The Sidhe, those ancient spirits who walked in the spaces between worlds, were believed to pass through the lone hawthorn, their footsteps soft and fleeting like whispers in the wind. The trees themselves were thought to hold the presence of the Sidhe, their roots entwined with the hidden roads of the other world. The land around these solitary trees was quiet, untouched by the rush of the world. The fields, where the wild grasses swayed with the wind, seemed to embrace the tree, and creating a space that felt suspended in time. The hawthorn stood as a still witness, its gnarled branches a sign of age, its blossoms pale in the spring, like a veil of delicate lace. The air around the tree was thick with the scent of the earth, the flowers, and the quiet magic that hung in the stillness. There was a softness to the place, a quiet peace that seemed to radiate from the tree itself. People, in their reverence for the tree, would often avoid disturbing it. It was not because they feared the tree itself, but because they respected the spirit of the Sidhe that was believed to dwell within it. The lone hawthorn, standing in the heart of the field, was a threshold, a place where the spirit world and the mortal world could touch. To approach the tree was to walk near the edge of the other world, and those who understood the ways of the land knew that it was not a place to trespass lightly. The hawthorn was a sacred keeper of the land's deepest secrets, and it was said that to harm it was to invite the anger of the Sidhe whose realm it marked. In the quiet of the landscape, with the earth beneath your feet and the sky above, it was easy to feel the magic of the place. The hawthorn, standing alone against the wide open space, was not a solitary tree in the way that most trees were. It was a sentinel, a place where the land itself seemed to breathe, and where the presence of the Sidhe lingered like the soft murmur of the wind. Here, the tree seemed to absorb the surrounding landscape, becoming one with the earth, as though the world itself were shaped by its roots and branches. The gentle hills, the soft grass, the distant horizon, all seemed to flow toward the hawthorn, making it the very heart of the land. There was a quiet respect paid to the lone hawthorn by those who passed by. The air around the tree was different, more still, as though the earth held its breath in reverence for the tree. The branches, though twisted and gnarled, held a sense of quiet strength. The flowers, when they bloomed in the spring, would be white and pure, their scent carried softly on the breeze, like a secret shared between the land and the spirits. The delicate blossoms seemed to shimmer in the fading light, casting a glow on the grass below, as though the tree itself were a beacon in the soft twilight. In the mornings, when the sun had just begun to rise and the mist still clung to the earth, and the lone hawthorn would stand bathed in the soft light, its branches heavy with dew. The fields around it would stretch endlessly, the distant hills rising gently in the distance, and all would be quiet except for the occasional rustle of the leaves in the wind. It was in these early hours, when the world was still asleep, that the magic of the hawthorn was most strongly felt. The tree, standing alone in the silence, was like a bridge to another world, a world where the Sidhe moved like shadows, unseen yet always near. People would often pass by, but few would dare to disturb the tree. Some would stop and gaze at it for a moment, their hearts filled with a quiet sense of awe, knowing that they stood near something sacred. The breeze would stir the leaves, and the flowers would shake gently in the wind, as though the tree was alive with whispers from another world. To approach the hawthorn was to enter into a space of ancient power, a space where the land and the spirits of the Sidhe were intertwined. There was a deep understanding in the land that this tree, though small in comparison to the towering oak, held within it the power of a gateway, a threshold between two worlds. The hawthorn was not merely a tree, but a living symbol of connection, of the meeting of realms. It was said that on moonlit nights, when the stars glittered brightly above and the night air was thick with magic, the Sidhe would pass through the hawthorn, slipping between worlds like shadows in the dark. Their presence was barely felt, a soft movement on the air, a sudden coolness in the breeze, as if the world had briefly shifted. The hawthorn stood as a silent witness to these moments, its branches bending in the wind as the Sidhe moved through it, crossing from one world to the next. And so, the lone hawthorn continued to stand in the open fields, its form a part of the landscape, yet somehow apart from it. It was a quiet guardian, watching over the land and the spirit world, its roots deep in the earth, its branches reaching toward the sky. The tree held within it the magic of the land, the whispers of the Sidhe, and the memories of those who had come before. It was a tree of passage, a tree of power, a tree that connected the living with the divine. The lone hawthorn standing in the quiet fields and hills was a reminder of the old ways, a reminder that the Sidhe, the spirits of the land, were never far away. The tree marked a place where the worlds met, where the boundary between the living and the dead was thin, and where the ancient magic of the land flowed freely. To pass by the hawthorn was to feel the presence of the other world, to touch the edge of a realm that existed just beyond the reach of mortal sight. The tree, though quiet and still, held the power of the Sidhe within its roots, its branches and its blossoms. When the earth stirs with the first warmth of spring, and the wind carries the scent of new growth, the hawthorn comes into bloom. The air, still crisp from the retreating chill of winter, becomes heavy with the fragrance of its blossoms, white, delicate, and fragrant like a soft breath of the land itself. These blooms, with their pale petals, are not just a herald of spring, but a sign of something deeper, something ancient. For the blooming of the hawthorn is tied to the sacred festival of Beltane, a time when the boundaries between the worlds grow thin, and the Sidhe walk freely among the living. Beltane, with its wildfires and celebration of the earth's fertility, marks a moment of transition, a moment when the veil between the mortal realm and the other world is lifted. It is a time of renewal, when the earth, once again, gives birth to life. And the living are reminded of their connection to the cycles of nature. The blooming of the hawthorn, delicate and fleeting, is a symbol of this threshold. Its blossoms are the quiet heralds of a time when the spirits of the land may slip from one world to the next with ease, when the wind seems to hum with the presence of things unseen. The fields, where the hawthorn grows, become a place of magic during Beltane. The sun, now high in the sky, warms the earth, and the flowers of the hawthorn seem to glow in the soft light, their pale blossoms drifting gently on the breeze. As the moon rises in the evening, casting a pale glow over the land, the air grows thick with the scent of the hawthorn. It is a fragrance that carries with it the spirit of the land, the memory of ancient rites, and the pulse of the seasons. The petals fall gently to the earth, carpeting the ground with their soft white blossoms, as if nature herself is offering a blessing, a gift to those who pass beneath the tree. At Beltane, the wildness of the earth is celebrated, and the blooming of the hawthorn is seen as a symbol of that untamed raw energy. The festivals of this time, which were once held in the sacred groves, near the hidden places of the land, were moments of communion with nature. The fires of Beltane were lit, their flames leaping high into the sky, as offerings to the gods and spirits of the land. People would gather around these fires, their faces illuminated by the flickering flames, as they danced and sang in honour of the season. The hawthorn in full bloom stood as the silent witness to these celebrations, its branches heavy with flowers, its presence a reminder of the magic that lingered in the air. It was said that on the night of Beltane, when the fires burned brightly and the stars shone like jewels in the dark sky, the Sidhe would emerge from their hidden realm. They would move between the trees, their footsteps soft like the rustling of leaves in the wind. Some believed that the Sidhe would dance with the living, joining in the festivities, sharing in the wild joy of the season. Others said that the Sidhe would gather beneath the hawthorn, their spirits drawn to the tree's ancient power, as the boundaries between the worlds grew thin. And as the night passed into dawn, when the first light of the sun kissed the earth, the Sidhe would slip back into the other world, leaving only the whisper of the wind and the fragrance of hawthorn blossoms in their wake. The air during Beltane was thick with the scent of the hawthorn's blossoms, carried on the breeze, mingling with the smoke of the fires. The fragrance of the blossoms was sweet, yet sharp, a scent that seemed to awaken something deep within the soul. It was the smell of magic, of transition, of the spirits moving between worlds. The scent of the hawthorn is fleeting, like the passing of time itself, and those who are fortunate enough to experience it are reminded that life, in all its beauty, is always in motion. The petals that fall from the tree, drifting softly to the ground, are a reminder that nothing in this world is permanent, that all things must pass, and that renewal is always just beyond the horizon. As the moon rose high on the night of Beltane, the land seemed to hold its breath, the world suspended between the waking and the dreaming. The moonlight cast a soft glow over the fields, illuminating the hawthorn's blossoms in a silvery light. The air was still, save for the gentle rustling of the leaves, and the land felt charged with a quiet, unspoken energy. It was a time when the earth itself seemed to hum with magic, and the veil between the worlds was so thin that one could almost touch the spirits of the Sidhe, who moved unseen beneath the branches of the trees. The flowers of the hawthorn bloomed in the moonlight, as of their fragrance filling the air, as if they were part of a greater timeless dance that stretched beyond the limits of the mortal world. The gentle fall of the blossoms drifting like snowflakes to the ground felt like the passing of a moment in time, fleeting and fragile. The hawthorn stood as the keeper of that moment, its branches heavy with life, its blossoms delicate and transient. The tree was a bridge between the worlds, its flowers the manifestation of a moment when the spirits of the earth and the living could meet. Those who passed beneath the hawthorn on Beltane night would carry with them the memory of that moment, of the delicate fragrance of the blossoms and the soft rustle of leaves in the breeze, as a reminder of the thinness of the veil and the magic that lingers between the worlds. As the day dawned, and the first light of the sun began to paint the sky with shades of pink and gold, the magic of Beltane began to fade. The flowers of the hawthorn, once bright and full of life, would soon begin to wither, their petals drifting softly to the earth. The winds would carry away the scent, and the sounds of the night would be replaced by the quiet hum of the morning. The Sidhe too would return to their hidden realm, leaving behind only the whisper of the wind and the memory of the night. The hawthorn, now bare, would stand as a silent witness to the passing of time, its blossoms scattered on the ground like forgotten dreams. But for that brief moment, during the bloom of the hawthorn on Beltane, the world was suspended in a state of magic. The air was thick with the scent of the flowers, the moonlight cast its soft glow, and the land seemed to hum with the presence of the Sidhe. It was a time when the boundaries between the worlds grew thin, and the land, with its ancient power, seemed to open its arms to the spirits of the earth. When the earth stirs with the first warmth of spring, and the wind carries the scent of new growth, the hawthorn comes into bloom. The air, still crisp from the retreating chill of winter, becomes heavy with the fragrance of its blossoms, white, delicate and fragrant like a soft breath of the land itself. These blooms, with their pale petals, are not just a herald of spring, but a sign of something deeper, something ancient. For the blooming of the hawthorn is tied to the sacred festival of Beltane, a time when the boundaries between the worlds grow thin, and the Sidhe walk freely among the living. Beltane, with its wildfires and celebration of the earth's fertility, marks a moment of transition, a moment when the veil between the mortal realm and the other world is lifted. It is a time of renewal, when the earth, once again, gives birth to life, and the living are reminded of their connection to the cycles of nature. The blooming of the hawthorn, delicate and fleeting, is a symbol of this threshold. Its blossoms are the quiet heralds of a time when the spirits of the land may slip from one world to the next with ease, when the wind seems to hum with the presence of things unseen. The fields, where the hawthorn grows, become a place of magic during Beltane. The sun, now high in the sky, warms the earth, and the flowers of the hawthorn seem to glow in the soft light, their pale blossoms drifting gently on the breeze. As the moon rises in the evening, casting a pale glow over the land, the air grows thick with the scent of the hawthorn. It is a fragrance that carries with it the spirit of the land, the memory of ancient rites, and the pulse of the seasons. The petals fall gently to the earth, carpeting the ground with their soft white blossoms, as if nature herself is offering a blessing, a gift to those who pass beneath the tree. At Beltane, the wildness of the earth is celebrated, and the blooming of the hawthorn is seen as a symbol of that untamed raw energy. The festivals of this time, which were once held in the sacred groves, near the hidden places of the land, were moments of communion with nature. The fires of Beltane were lit, their flames leaping high into the sky, as offerings to the gods and spirits of the land. People would gather around these fires, their faces illuminated by the flickering flames, as they danced and sang in honour of the season. The hawthorn in full bloom stood as the silent witness to these celebrations, its branches heavy with flowers, its presence a reminder of the magic that lingered in the air. It was said that on the night of Beltane, when the fires burned brightly and the stars shone like jewels in the dark sky, the Sidhe would emerge from their hidden realm. They would move between the trees, their footsteps soft like the rustling of leaves in the wind. Some believed that the Sidhe would dance with the living, joining in the festivities, sharing in the wild joy of the season. Others said that the Sidhe would gather beneath the hawthorn, their spirits drawn to the tree's ancient power as the boundaries between the worlds grew thin. And as the night passed into dawn, when the first light of the sun kissed the earth, the Sidhe would slip back into the other world, leaving only the whisper of the wind and the fragrance of hawthorn blossoms in their wake. The air during Beltane was thick with the scent of the hawthorn's blossoms, carried on the breeze, mingling with the smoke of the fires. The fragrance of the blossoms was sweet, yet sharp, a scent that seemed to awaken something deep within the soul. It was the smell of magic, of transition, of the spirits moving between worlds. The scent of the hawthorn is fleeting, like the passing of time itself, and those who are fortunate enough to experience it are reminded that life, in all its beauty, is always in motion. The petals that fall from the tree drifting softly to the ground are a reminder that nothing in this world is permanent, that all things must pass, and that renewal is always just beyond the horizon. As the moon rose high on the night of Beltane, the land seemed to hold its breath, the world suspended between the waking and the dreaming. The moonlight cast a soft glow over the fields, illuminating the hawthorn's blossoms in a silvery light. The air was still, save for the gentle rustling of the leaves, and the land felt charged with a quiet, unspoken energy. It was a time when the earth itself seemed to hum with magic, and the veil between the worlds was so thin that one could almost touch the spirits of the Sidhe, who moved unseen beneath the branches of the trees. The flowers of the hawthorn bloomed in the moonlight, as of their fragrance filling the air as if they were part of a greater timeless dance that stretched beyond the limits of the mortal world. The gentle fall of the blossoms drifting like snowflakes to the ground felt like the passing of a moment in time, fleeting and fragile. The hawthorn stood as the keeper of that moment, its branches heavy with life, its blossoms delicate and transient. The tree was a bridge between the worlds, its flowers the manifestation of a moment when the spirits of the earth and the living could meet. Those who passed beneath the hawthorn on Beltane night would carry with them the memory of that moment, of the delicate fragrance of the blossoms and the soft rustle of leaves in the breeze, as a reminder of the thinness of the veil and the magic that lingers between the worlds. As the day dawned, and the first light of the sun began to paint the sky with shades of pink and gold, the magic of Beltane began to fade. The flowers of the hawthorn, once bright and full of life, would soon begin to wither, their petals drifting softly to the earth. The winds would carry away the scent, and the sounds of the night would be replaced by the quiet hum of the morning. The Sidhe too would return to their hidden realm, leaving behind only the whisper of the wind and the memory of the night. The hawthorn, now bare, would stand as a silent witness to the passing of time, its blossoms scattered on the ground like forgotten dreams. But for that brief moment, during the bloom of the hawthorn on Beltane, the world was suspended in a state of magic. The air was thick with the scent of the flowers, the moonlight cast its soft glow, and the land seemed to hum with the presence of the Sidhe. It was a time when the boundaries between the worlds grew thin, and the land, with its ancient power, seemed to open its arms to the spirits of the earth. In the quiet corners of the land, beneath the shadow of ancient trees, there were whispers, soft, subtle, almost imperceptible to those who had not learned to listen closely. These whispers spoke of a time when the land was more alive with magic, when the spirits of the Sidhe moved freely through the earth, and the trees stood as sentinels between worlds. among the many stories that the wind carried on its breath, there was one that often reached the ears of those who wandered too close to the sacred groves. The belief that disturbing certain trees, the hawthorn, the oak and the ash, could bring misfortune, a quiet consequence woven into the very fabric of the land. These trees, with their deep roots and gnarled limbs, were not just part of the landscape. They were living memories of ancient power. They held the essence of the land within their bark, yet their branches reaching both towards the heavens and down into the earth. They were the bridges between the mortal realm and the spirit world, and it was said that to disturb them was to disrupt the balance, to unsettle the quiet rhythm of the earth itself. The Sidhe, those hidden spirits, were believed to walk among the trees, slipping through the veil between worlds, and it was said that they took great care to protect their sacred spaces. The belief was not one of fear, but of respect. To disturb a fairy tree, to cut it down or uproot it, was to bring an unwanted disruption to the delicate harmony between the living and the unseen. It was said that the spirits of the Sidhe, who made their homes in these trees, would become unsettled, their presence no longer a quiet, protective force, but one that could carry a quiet, lingering misfortune. The misfortune, however, was not dramatic or immediate. It was not a curse that would befall a person with thunder and lightning, but a subtle shift, a quiet disturbance in the natural flow of life, like a stone tossed into a still pond, its ripples reaching out across the surface, touching things in ways that were hard to perceive. In the quiet of the countryside, when the wind shifted in a certain way, there were those who could sense the change. The way the air would feel thick, like something unseen had entered the space. It was believed that this change in the atmosphere was the result of a disruption, whether intentional or accidental, of the land's balance. The flowers of the hawthorn, those delicate white blooms, were said to lose their fragrance, the trees themselves growing silent, as though holding their breath. The branches would sway with a nervous energy, a faint stirring in the wind, and it was said that the spirits of the Sidhe would grow restless. In their restlessness, they would bring subtle misfortune, a slight chill in the air, a feeling of unease that settled like a cloud over the land. This misfortune, as it was told, never struck in obvious ways. It was not a bolt from the heavens, but the slow wearing down of good fortune. The harvest might be smaller than expected, the crops not as healthy as they had been in seasons past. A traveller might find themselves lost on the roads, unable to reach their destination, as though the earth itself had shifted beneath their feet. There were times when the weather would change suddenly, when the sun would hide behind clouds, and the rains would come unexpectedly, leaving the land sodden and heavy. The spirits of the Sidhe, it was believed, were simply reminding the people that they had been disturbed, that the balance had been shifted. The belief was rooted deeply in the quiet ways of the land. It was not just the cutting of a tree that could bring misfortune, but the careless words spoken near them, or the disregard for the sacredness of these ancient places. There were old stories of travellers who, in their haste, had set foot upon a grove where a hawthorn stood alone in a field. They had not known its significance, had not been taught the old ways, and they had trod upon the ground beneath it, disturbing the roots. It was said that those travellers would find their paths winding longer than they had seemed, their steps growing wearier, the journey taking them through places they had never meant to go. The misfortune, again, was never sharp or sudden. It was not the striking of a lightning bolt, but the quiet unravelling of certainty. A merchant, who had once been prosperous, would find that his goods no longer sold as well, that his travels were marred with obstacles, as if the winds themselves were pushing against him. A farmer might see their crops wilting despite the tender care they gave, as though the earth no longer responded to their work. And in the night, when sleep should have been peaceful, there would be dreams of lost roads, of paths that led nowhere, of voices whispering in the distance. These were the subtle ways in which the spirits of the Sidhe, guarding their sacred trees, would remind the living that their world was not to be disturbed lightly. The sense of misfortune never struck all at once, but wove through the days like a quiet stream, slowly eroding the peace that had once been there. And it was not just those who directly disturbed the trees who felt this unease. The ripples, like those of a pebble in water, would often extend to the community, to those who lived in the land near the sacred groves. The misfortune would settle like a fog, a quiet disquiet that would linger until the balance was restored, until the land and its spirits could once again breathe in peace. Yet, it was not always the case that misfortune followed those who disturbed the sacred trees. There were stories, too, of people who, having cut down a tree or stumbled too close to the groves, would eventually find themselves guided to a place of understanding. Sometimes they would offer an apology, a quiet gesture of respect to the land, perhaps by planting a new tree, perhaps by leaving a token of thanks at the base of an old one. These simple acts of reverence were believed to restore balance, to soothe the restless spirits of the Sidhe and bring the natural flow of life back to its gentle course. The belief in the consequences of disturbing these sacred trees was not just about fear or superstition. It was an understanding of the land's deep, living spirit, a recognition that the earth and its creatures, the trees, the rivers, the hills, were all part of a greater, interconnected whole. The Sidhe, who walked between the worlds, were not gods to be feared, but protectors of the land, and guardians of the old ways and the natural rhythms of life. To disturb these guardians, even unintentionally, was to step outside of that rhythm, and the land, in its quiet wisdom, would bring its balance back, often in ways that were soft but always felt. In this way, the folklore of the fairy trees lived on, carried gently through the generations. It was not a tale of punishment, but a lesson in respect, a lesson in the quiet, ever-present magic of the land that must be honoured. In the hidden, quiet corners of the land, where the wind whispers softly through the leaves and the earth breathes beneath the feet, there are places where the oak, the ash, and the hawthorn stand together in serene unity. These groves, ancient and revered, are not merely spaces where trees grow, but sacred landscapes, places where the boundaries between the worlds are woven thin, where the spirits of the Sidhe can pass freely, and where the land itself seems to hum with the memory of ages long past. These groves, with their gentle power, have been held in reverence for as long as the stars have watched over the earth, and they still stand as timeless witnesses to the rhythm of the world. The oak, with its wide, sweeping branches and towering strength, holds a place of honour at the heart of these groves. It is a tree of resilience, of endurance, its roots stretching deep into the earth, anchoring it to the pulse of the land. The ash, slender and graceful, stands beside the oak, its branches reaching toward the heavens, as though seeking to touch the skies. The hawthorn, small yet powerful in its presence, weaves between them, its delicate blossoms a symbol of the delicate balance between life and death. Together, these three sacred trees create a space where the land itself seems to breathe, a place where time slows and the air is thick with the power of ancient magic. These groves were not just places of beauty, they were believed to be the gateways to the realms of the Sidhe, the hidden folk who walked in the spaces between worlds. To enter such a grove was to step into a space where the mortal and the divine coexisted, where the veil between the worlds was thin, and where the spirits of the earth moved freely. The oak, ash, and hawthorn were the pillars of this sacred space, each tree embodying a different aspect of the natural world. The oak stood as the guardian of strength and endurance, the ash as the bridge between the heavens and the earth, and the hawthorn as the keeper of life's cycles, the delicate balance of birth, death, and rebirth. The atmosphere within these groves was unlike any other place on the land. The air felt thick, as though it were charged with magic, a quiet hum that seemed to resonate from the trees themselves. The leaves of the oak rustled softly in the breeze, their deep green sheen shimmering in the dappled sunlight. The ash, with its pale, smooth bark and slender limbs, swayed in the wind, its branches lifting toward the sky like fingers reaching for the stars. The hawthorn, its branches twisted and gnarled, stood in stark contrast, its delicate white blossoms spilling like snowflakes upon the ground. The contrast between these trees, each so different in appearance, seemed to harmonize in the way they stood together, a testament to the balance of nature and to the ancient forces of the world. The ground beneath these trees was often soft and moss-covered, a natural carpet that seemed to invite quiet contemplation. The roots of the trees, deep and intertwining, seemed to stretch far beneath the earth, creating a network of life that connected the trees to one another, to the land, and to the hidden realms beneath. In these groves, the ground was alive with the energy of the earth itself. The quiet hum of life, of unseen spirits and ancient power, resonated through the air, and every step taken within the grove felt like a step taken in the presence of the divine. In the stillness of these sacred groves, the spirits of the Sidhe were believed to walk, their footsteps soft as whispers, their presence felt more than seen. The Sidhe, often described as beings of light and shadow, were said to dwell within the trees themselves, their spirits entwined with the roots, branches, and leaves of the oak, ash, and hawthorn. It was believed that the Sidhe could move freely between these trees, slipping between the realms with the ease of a breeze passing through the leaves. Those who were fortunate enough to enter the grove with an open heart and a respectful mind might feel the touch of the Sidhe, their presence like a breath of wind or a soft rustle of leaves. These groves were places where the past and the present converged. The spirits of the ancestors were believed to linger in these places, their memories etched into the very fabric of the land. The oak, with its ancient bark and deep roots, was a keeper of these memories, its rings speaking the language of time. The ash, with its smooth bark and graceful limbs, stood as a symbol of connection between the heavens, the earth, and the realms below. The hawthorn, with its delicate flowers and dark thorns, was the guardian of the cycle of life itself, a reminder that all things must come to an end only to be reborn again. To those who knew the land, these groves were sacred. They were not places to be disturbed lightly, but to be approached with reverence, with a quiet understanding that they were not simply part of the earth, but part of a larger cosmic order. It was said that to disturb the grove, to harm the trees, was to disrupt the balance of the land itself, and those who did so would face the consequences of their actions. But to approach the grove with respect, to sit beneath the boughs of the oak, ash, or hawthorn, was to open oneself to the wisdom of the land, to the ancient knowledge that the trees held within their bark. The light in these groves was always soft, filtered through the thick canopy of leaves. In the early morning, when the dew still clung to the grass and the air was cool with the breath of night, the groves felt like a place out of time, untouched by the passing of the seasons. The mist would hang low over the ground, the trees standing like silent sentinels in the half-light. In the afternoon, when the sun would climb high in the sky, the light would filter through the leaves, casting dappled shadows on the forest floor. And in the evening, when the air cooled and the moon began to rise, the groves took on a different character, quiet and peaceful, but filled with a palpable sense of mystery, as though the land itself were holding its breath. These groves were not only sacred in a physical sense, but also in the way they held the land together. The oak, ash, and hawthorn were believed to hold the spirits of the Sidhe in their roots, their branches and their leaves, creating a connection between the living and the dead, between the mortal and the divine. In these groves, the boundary between worlds was not defined by time or space, but by the energy of the land itself. It was in these places, under the boughs of the oak, the ash, and the hawthorn, that one could feel the quiet pulse of life, of death and of rebirth, a reminder that the earth itself was alive with spirit, with magic, and with memory. In the quiet of the groves, as the wind rustled the leaves and the birds sang their soft songs, the oak, ash, and hawthorn stood as timeless guardians of the land. They were not merely trees, but sacred beings, each one a bridge between realms, each one holding the memory of the earth in its bark and branches. To walk beneath their boughs was to walk in the presence of the divine, to step into a space where the boundaries between the worlds grew thin, and the spirits of the Sidhe could be felt in the rustling of the leaves, in the soft whisper of the wind. In the quiet corners of the land, where the hills rise softly under the glow of the moon, and the air is thick with the scent of earth and ancient memories, the trees stand as living records of the world's long past. It is said that these trees, the oak, the ash, the hawthorn, and others that grew in the sacred groves remember not just the seasons, not just the winds and the rains, but the passing of the Sidhe, the spirits who once walked the land. These trees, ancient and gnarled, carry the weight of centuries in their roots and branches, and in their quiet presence, the land itself seems to hum with the echoes of those who have gone before. The belief is as old as the hills themselves, that the trees, with their deep roots and far-reaching branches, hold the memory of the Sidhe, those hidden spirits of the earth. It is said that when the Sidhe moved through the land, when they passed between worlds, the trees would absorb their presence, their essence, their quiet song. As the Sidhe walked beneath the boughs of the ancient trees, their spirits would be woven into the very fabric of the land, and the trees, in turn, would remember. The wind through the leaves, the soft rustle of the branches, the shifting shadows beneath the trees. All of these were said to be the voices of the Sidhe, echoing through the trees like a quiet, eternal music. At night, when the sky is heavy with stars, the trees are especially alive with memory. The air is cool, and the land is bathed in the soft silver light of the moon. It is in these quiet moments, beneath the starlit hills, that the trees remember the Sidhe most strongly. The soft rustling of the leaves in the wind is not just the movement of nature, but the stirring of ancient spirits, the passing of those who have long since gone from the mortal realm. The trees, in their silence, speak of the Sidhe, their presence lingering in the rustle of leaves, in the stillness of the night, in the very breath of the earth. The Sidhe were not beings bound by time as mortals are. They moved between realms, slipping between the living world and the hidden worlds of the spirits, leaving behind only whispers and traces of their passing. But the trees, with their ancient roots and long memories, held the mark of their presence. The Sidhe would walk beneath the oak, the ash, the hawthorn, and their footsteps would leave an imprint, not in the soil, but in the very essence of the trees. The trees would remember their touch, their passage through the land as a soft, lingering memory, like the faintest echo of a song once sung. To the ancient Celts, the idea that trees could remember the Sidhe was not a mere myth, but a quiet truth. The trees, with their deep roots that stretched far beneath the earth, were believed to be connected to the very bones of the land. They were not just plants, but living records of the land's history. Each tree, with its gnarled bark and wide, as reaching branches, held the stories of those who had walked before, the gods, the ancestors, and the Sidhe. The wind through the branches was not just the breath of the earth, but the voice of the Sidhe, speaking softly through the leaves, telling stories of worlds unseen. There are those who believe that if you stand beneath the branches of these ancient trees on a quiet night when the wind is still and the stars hang heavy above, you can hear the Sidhe speaking, not in words, but in the rustle of the leaves, in the shifting shadows beneath the trees. It is said that the Sidhe pass through the trees in the quiet hours of the night, their spirits moving like shadows through the branches, their voices carried on the wind. The trees remember the Sidhe's passage, their spirits woven into the bark and branches, their songs echoing in the soft rustling of the leaves. These trees are not just landmarks in the landscape, they are the keepers of memory. It is said that the oak, with its broad, sturdy trunk and far-reaching branches, holds the memory of the Sidhe's strength. The ash, with its tall, slender form, remembers the movement of the Sidhe between the worlds, its roots stretching deep into the earth and reaching toward the heavens. The hawthorn, small yet powerful in its presence, remembers the Sidhe's passage through the cycles of life, death, and rebirth. The spirits of the Sidhe are not lost to time. They are carried in the very essence of the trees, their memory living on in the soft whisper of the wind, in the flickering of moonlight through the branches, in the silence of the hills at night. As the seasons change, the trees continue to remember. In the spring, when the leaves unfurl and the branches reach toward the sky, the Sidhe's spirit is felt in the new life that emerges from the earth. In the summer, when the trees stand full and strong, the Sidhe's presence is felt in the warmth of the sun and the soft hum of the wind through the leaves. In the fall, when the leaves turn golden and drift to the ground, the Sidhe's memory lingers in the stillness of the land, in the quiet passing of time, and in the winter when the trees stand bare and the land is wrapped in silence, the Sidhe's spirit is felt in the cold, the stillness, the quiet space between the worlds. These are the trees that stand as the living memory of the Sidhe, the oak, the ash, and the hawthorn. Their presence in the land is not just one of beauty, but one of deep, abiding power. They are the trees that hold the secrets of the land, the stories of the spirits, and the whispers of those who have long since passed. The Sidhe, in their quiet movement between worlds, leave behind their mark in the trees, and these trees in turn carry that mark through the centuries, remembering the Sidhe's passage, their presence, their spirit. It is in these moments of quiet, when the wind stirs the leaves and the moon casts its pale light over the land, that the trees speak most clearly. The rustling of the branches, the soft murmurs in the air, are not just the sound of nature. They are the voices of the Sidhe, speaking through the trees, remembering their journey through the world, their passage between realms. The trees stand as silent guardians, holding the memory of the Sidhe in their bark and branches, their roots and leaves. And in the stillness of the night, beneath the glow of the moon and the starlit hills, the Sidhe's presence can still be felt, in the wind through the leaves, in the quiet music of the earth. In the deep silence of the land, where the earth rises and falls like a slow breath, there exists a landscape rich with myth and memory. This land, shaped by the hands of ancient gods and forgotten spirits, is alive in ways that the mortal eye may not always see. The hills roll like the gentle curves of the earth's ancient body, covered in a soft mist that rises with the dawn, drifting across the quiet fields where sacred trees, the oak, ash and hawthorn, stand as quiet sentinels, their roots deep in the earth, their branches reaching out to the heavens. These trees, along with the hills, wells and fairy roads that weave through the land, form a living landscape, a space where the Sidhe, the spirits of the land, move quietly between worlds, their presence felt in the rustling of leaves and the soft murmur of the wind. The hills, like great ancient bones of the earth, have always held a special place in the hearts of those who walk this land. They are more than just mounds of earth, for beneath their gentle slopes lie the memory of times long past, of gods who walked among men, and spirits who moved freely through the land. These hills are said to be the resting places of the Sidhe, their spirits dwelling in the deep hidden chambers beneath the earth, where the world of the living and the world of the dead merge into one. At night, when the moon hangs high and the world grows still, the Sidhe are believed to move through these hills, in their footsteps soft as whispers, their forms hidden in the shadow of the earth. The hills are sacred places where the veil between the worlds is thinnest, and where the Sidhe walk in silence, unseen yet ever present. Scattered throughout this land are the wells, pools of water that hold the ancient wisdom of the earth. These wells, often hidden in the quiet corners of forests or tucked away in fields, are not mere sources of water, but are believed to be portals to the other world. It is said that the Sidhe, in their travels between realms, would often pause at these wells, drawing from the magic of the water and the deep connection to the earth. The wells are the gateways where the living can feel the presence of the Sidhe, where the whisper of ancient voices can be heard on the wind, carried in the ripples of the water. To stand beside a sacred well is to stand at the threshold of another world, a space where the mortal and the divine can meet, where the Sidhe's quiet song can be heard, softly in the movement of the water. The roads of the Sidhe, the hidden fairy roads, wind their way through this living landscape, winding between hills, beside sacred trees, and near the ancient wells. These roads are not made of stone or earth, but are invisible paths that can only be felt, like a shift in the air, a gentle change in the rhythm of the land. As to walk these roads is to move through a world where the veil between the living and the unseen is thin, where the Sidhe can be felt moving beside you, their presence as quiet and invisible as the wind. These roads, though unseen, are as real as the earth beneath your feet, their energy woven into the very fabric of the land. They are the paths that the Sidhe walk, slipping between the worlds with ease, their footsteps light upon the earth, their presence lingering in the quiet corners of the landscape. The sacred trees, the oak, the ash, the hawthorn, stand as living pillars within this landscape, marking the sacred places where the Sidhe walk. The oak, with its strong roots and towering branches, is the guardian of the land, holding the power of strength and endurance in its limbs. The ash, slender and graceful, is the bridge between the realms, its roots reaching deep into the earth while its branches reach toward the heavens. And the hawthorn, small yet powerful, holds the memory of the cycles of life and death. Its blossoms a reminder of the delicate balance between birth and rebirth. These trees are not simply part of the land. They are the land, the living embodiment of the spirits of the Sidhe, their energy woven into the fabric of the landscape. The Sidhe are believed to move freely among these trees, slipping between their branches, their spirits intertwined with the very life of the land. And as the wind moves through the leaves, stirring the branches of the sacred trees, it is said that the Sidhe move quietly between worlds, their presence felt more than seen. The Sidhe are not beings of loud footsteps and grand gestures, but spirits who slip through the landscape like shadows in the night. Their movements are soft, their presence fleeting like the rustle of leaves in the wind, or the faint murmur of the water in the wells. The Sidhe do not announce themselves with fanfare, but instead they move with the natural rhythm of the earth, in harmony with the land itself. They walk the fairy roads, passing beneath the oak and ash, crossing the hills and the fields, slipping between the worlds with a grace and quietness that only the earth can understand. At dawn, when the first light of the sun spills over the hills, the land is still and the Sidhe rest, returning to their hidden realm. But even in their absence, their presence lingers, and woven into the very fabric of the landscape. The wind still whispers through the branches of the trees, the earth still hums with the magic of the Sidhe, and the wells, though quiet, still hold the memory of their passing. The landscape, in its stillness, becomes a living memory of the Sidhe, a place where the earth and the spirit world are intertwined, where the veil between the worlds is so thin that it can almost be touched. In this living landscape, the Sidhe continue to move, now quietly and invisibly, their spirits living on in the land itself, The hills, the wells, the sacred trees and the fairy roads form a single, unified landscape, a place where the Sidhe walk with the rhythm of the earth. It is a place of deep magic, where the presence of the spirits can be felt in the rustle of leaves, the murmur of water, and the stillness of the hills. The Sidhe do not remain in one place for long. They move quietly between realms, their presence as fleeting as the wind. But they leave behind a mark, a trace of their passing that lingers in the landscape. The land remembers them, and in the quiet of the night, when the moon rises high and the stars shine down like forgotten memories, the Sidhe continue their journey, walking silently between the worlds. And as the Sidhe move quietly through this living landscape, the land continues to breathe, to pulse with the memory of the spirits. The hills rise and fall, the trees stretch their branches toward the sky. The wells shimmer with the memory of the other world, and the fairy roads wind through it all, hidden yet ever present. In this quiet landscape where the Sidhe walk between the worlds, the earth itself becomes a sacred place, a living testament to the spirits who move quietly through the land, leaving their presence in the wind, in the trees, in the water, and in the memory of the earth. In the quiet corners of the world where the hills rise and fall like the gentle breath of the earth, the sacred trees stand as silent guardians of the hidden realms beneath the land. The oak, the ash, and the hawthorn. These trees are not simply a part of the landscape, but the keepers of the gateways to the unseen, the protectors of the hidden world of the Sidhe. Beneath the hills, where the roots of these trees stretch deep into the earth, the Sidhe pass between realms, and moving like shadows through the fabric of time. The trees in their ancient stillness stand as sentinels, guarding the threshold where the worlds meet, where the boundary between the living and the spirit world is thin. The oak, with its broad, strong trunk and deep, ancient roots, is the guardian of strength. It stands like a pillar between the worlds, its branches stretching toward the heavens, its roots reaching deep into the earth, touching the very bones of the land. The oak is a silent witness to the passage of time, its bark worn smooth by centuries of winds and rains, its leaves rustling in the breeze like whispers from the past. In the quiet of the night, the oak seems to breathe with the pulse of the earth, its presence a reminder of the strength and endurance of the land itself. Beneath its boughs, the Sidhe walk in silence, their footsteps soft as whispers, their spirits intertwined with the deep magic of the tree. The oak is the guardian of the ancient world, a bridge between the mortal and the divine, a living memory of the Sidhe's passage through the land. The ash, tall and slender, stands beside the oak, its graceful form reaching for the heavens while its roots sink deep into the earth. The ash is the tree of connection, the bridge between realms. Its branches seem to stretch not only toward the sky, but also toward the earth, creating a living pathway between the two. The ash is the guardian of the hidden roads of the Sidhe, the quiet paths that wind between the worlds, where the spirits move in silence, slipping between realms like shadows in the night. The leaves of the ash rustle softly in the breeze, carrying with them the faintest trace of the Sidhe's presence, like a distant murmur on the wind. The ash, with its slender, graceful form, is the keeper of the doorway between the worlds, a silent sentinel watching over the path that the Sidhe walk. And then, there is the hawthorn, small yet powerful in its presence. The hawthorn stands with its gnarled branches and delicate blossoms, a symbol of life and death, of birth and rebirth. The hawthorn is the tree of transformation, the guardian of the cycles of life. Its white blossoms bloom in the spring, like a breath of life upon the earth, and its berries ripen in the autumn, a reminder of the passage of time. The hawthorn stands at the edge of the sacred groves, where the boundary between the worlds is at its thinnest, and where the Sidhe pass through with quiet grace. The spirits of the Sidhe, it is said, move most freely beneath the hawthorn's branches, their presence lingering in the air like a soft murmur carried on the wind. The hawthorn, though small and delicate in comparison to the oak and the ash, holds a deep power, the power of the cycle, the power of the unseen forces that move through the land. Together these trees form a sacred triad, or each one a silent guardian of the hidden realms beneath the hills. The oak, with its strength and endurance, stands as the protector of the earth, a silent sentinel watching over the world of the living. The ash, with its graceful branches and deep roots, is the keeper of the pathways between realms, a bridge between the mortal and the divine. The hawthorn, with its delicate blossoms and deep connection to the cycles of life, is the guardian of the transformations that occur between the worlds. These trees, in their quiet beauty and ancient presence, hold the keys to the hidden world of the Sidhe, and through them the spirits of the land move in silence, slipping between realms with ease. The Sidhe, though unseen, are never far from the sacred trees. Their spirits, it is said, linger in the rustling of the leaves, in the soft murmur of the wind, in the quiet music of the earth. The Sidhe pass between the worlds, walking the fairy roads that wind through the land, guided by the oak, of the ash, and the hawthorn. The spirits of the Sidhe are not bound by time or space. They move as quietly as shadows, as softly as the wind through the branches. They pass through the trees, slipping between the worlds like whispers on the breeze, their presence felt more than seen. These sacred groves where the oak, the ash, and the hawthorn grow are not just places of beauty, but places of deep, abiding magic. The air is thick with the presence of the Sidhe, and in the quiet of the night, when the moon hangs low in the sky and the stars shine like distant memories, the trees seem to come alive with the spirits of the land. The rustling of the leaves is not just the sound of nature, but the voices of the Sidhe, speaking softly through the branches. The Sidhe, it is said, are always near, walking the fairy roads that wind through the hills, passing between the worlds with the quiet grace of the ancient trees. And so, the oak, the ash, and the hawthorn stand as the quiet guardians of the hidden world. They watch over the fairy roads, the sacred wells, and the quiet hills, where the Sidhe move between realms, unseen but ever present. The trees are the keepers of memory, the guardians of the land's ancient magic, and through them the Sidhe continue their quiet journey between the worlds. The trees stand as silent sentinels, their branches reaching toward the heavens, their roots sinking deep into the earth, holding the land together, the living and the unseen, the mortal and the divine. Though the Sidhe may be hidden from mortal sight, their presence is always felt in the quiet places of the world. The trees, with their deep roots and wide branches, stand as living markers of the boundary between the worlds. The Sidhe, in their quiet way, still walk the land, moving like shadows between the oak, the ash, and the hawthorn, their spirits woven into the very fabric of the landscape. And as the wind stirs the leaves and the moonlight dances on the hills, the trees remain, silent, steadfast, and eternal guardians of the hidden world beneath the earth.